I'm Dr. John Gartner.
And I'm Dr. Harry Siegel.
And welcome to this preview of Shrinking Trump.
John and I have been doing this show since April. We have been warning the country, the public, the elites, the media about Trump's cognitive decline, his incipient dementia, as well as his severe personality disorder. But now we're taking this time for a pause as we await Trump's accession to power, which we have grave concerns about. But we're also devoting our show to thinking about how to prepare for that and how to live in this kind of situation. So on the show today, we'll be really showing a number of things, but one of them is a great cartoonist for the Washington Post who stood up to the oppression of this coming political correctness, I would call it.
And we'll be talking about a Meta CEO who didn't.
Right. And also, we have a wonderful guest, Pilar Jennings, a psychoanalyst, practicing Buddhist teacher, who has some wonderful things to say about how we can move forward together.
Now, Profile in Courage is the great cartoonist Anne Talanace, a real institution at the Washington Post. She submitted this cartoon for publication. Now, for those of you who are just listening, it's a giant statue of Trump, and you see a bunch of billionaires kneeling, holding up bags of cash that they're giving to him while they're genuflecting. And one of those billionaires looks a lot like Jeff Bezos. There's also a dead Mickey Mouse at the bottom of the statue, referring to the ABC settlement, where they also gave bags of cash to in tribute to the king. Now, the thing about this cartoon is that, and this has never, ever happened before, Jeff Bezos, as the owner of the paper, forbid them from publishing that cartoon.
Never happened before.
Never happened before.
And I mentioned earlier in the show Herb Block. Well, she's a descendant of Herb Block and a fantastic cartoonist.
And so, one of the things that Snyder has told us to do, that all the democracy experts have told us to do, is not to at least make note when another democratic institution or guardrail falls. Okay, so we have to make note of the fact that we now have Jeff Bezos running interference for himself, but also for Trump. Now, yes. Anne Talanace did the dignified and the honorable thing. She resigned from the Washington Post. And it was a news story for about a day. One thing that I like is that a group of cartoonists in solidarity with her, let's see what they did. So Amy Siskin writes, perfect response from Anne Talanace. Quote, my colleagues have been so supportive, for which I am also so very grateful. My wonderful colleague, Steve Brodner, suggested that other cartoonists create their own versions of the killed cartoon, which I've included a few below. So let's look at those different versions of the same idea. Here's clearly a Jeff Bezos figure kissing the ass, literally, of this giant statue of Trump sort of tipping over. And it says after Anne Talanace in parentheses as the wording. That's Barry Blitt. Look at the next one. Steve Brodner also showing all billionaires. Actually, here we got a giant mouth. Trump's got this giant mouth, and they're pouring bags of cash into the giant mouth. And I think these, if they're identifiable or not, actually, I'm not sure who.
But again, Mickey Mouse, you can see Mickey Mouse. Dead.
Oh, another dead Mickey Mouse. Okay, there you go. And it also says after Talanace spiked art for the Washington Post. So it's a direct tribute. It's in the wording of the cartoon. Let's see one more. Okay, a giant mouth of Trump, but it looks like the gates of hell, and there's flames all around. And you actually now they're labeled. They are on their knees worshiping him. We hear, Lord, and we obey in advance, they say. Is there anything that you want to say about the psychodynamic or the intersection of psychodynamic factors and these Buddhist practices or ideas?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's no question. it's clear the two of you know. I mean, there's so much unconscious material that has led to this predicament that we're in. Right? I think the fantasy of someone else ushering in needed good, needed resources, right? Needed recognition, and offloading all of that into another person. And this has always been a setup for shadowy, problematic figures to come into the political arena and wreak havoc.
Interesting.
I would say certainly also, obviously, the unconscious misogyny, the unconscious white supremacy that's so deeply embedded in the American psyche. We just haven't done sufficient reckoning with those fault lines, and so they get cracked open, and then we all fall in. And I suppose this is always true for us personally, that we're constantly tacking back and forth between some degree of powerlessness. I mean, this is often why people come into therapy, right? Because there's some awareness that they're not going to be able to help their mother become a better mother, help their partner get enlightened and become more loving. But there's still the determination to make it happen. There's still some determination to get what's longed for from someone who can't offer it. So Ryushin is offering us a needed reminder that one thing we can do to reduce suffering is to actually even just imagine the truth of our powerlessness on an existential level. Right? I mean, in the Dharma, we're constantly reminded we're going to die. We don't know when we're going to die. We don't know how we're going to die. I mean, as a New Yorker, I can't stand it, but it's true. Right? But then right alongside that fundamental absence of control is the reality of having this mind that's so imbued with usually untapped gifts and insights and capacity. And so it's actually a very optimistic tradition. It's suggested that if we want to be an agent for healing and change, we can, but we have to use our minds more deeply and fully.
So no matter how dark things get outside of us, there is still light inside of us. And you talk about that little dot of the Buddha, or I think about the wheel of life in the Tibetan tradition with the different realms, right? There's always one little Buddha in the corner of each realm, right? There's always a way out, whichever realm you're inhabiting.
That's right. That's right. And it's the Bodhisattva's way to actually want to go into the suffering realms. Right. I mean, when people ask the Dalai Lama what's going to happen after he dies, he always says, well, I mean, basically, he can't know, but he hopes he'll be reborn wherever there is the most suffering. I know it really touches me because it's not, it's not what I hope for.
I was hoping for an upgrade, frankly.
But that is actually the Bodhisattva's way. I will not turn away until all suffering ends.
So, anything else you want to say, John, before we end our preview?
Well, join us on the Really American Network to see the full show of Shrinking Trump. We'll see you there.
Take care.
Bye-bye.